Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jaya Kula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are.
Could you talk about narratives?
Is there a reason you chose the word narrative rather than story?
Yeah, I guess narratives as in like the narratives we have going on inside of our minds and not like in general.
One of the most fundamental principles of reality is that everything works the same way at every level. There's 7 or 8 processes just traveling through all of existence, expressing themselves in a more expansive, free way, all the way through on the continuum to a more contracted and limited way. So if we tell a lot of stories, if we have a lot of stories going on in our heads, which we know we do, in fact, it's not just in our heads. We have stories going on in our heads. We produce stories talking to other people, like pretty much everything we're saying is some kind of story most of the time. We watch stories incessantly. We entertain ourselves with stories. Our lives are filled with stories. So if we think of the principle of as above, so below, what can we infer from that?
God is telling stories.
God is telling stories, yes. If we are literally telling stories, even in our sleep, we're telling stories. We never stop. What we can infer from that is that storytelling is part of all of reality, aka God. And the real question is, what's the difference between our stories and God's stories? Of course, our stories are God's stories. We can't let ourselves off the hook there, pretend it's all so different. It's not. God is telling our kind of story too. But from our relative perspective, our stories, well, sometimes they are creative, spontaneous productions closer to what God is doing. But what you're referring to, those things in our head that we're living there, as they say, rent free, those stories have a huge karmic flavor. And what is the hallmark of karmas? What does karma mean, first of all?
Patterns of body, energy, mind traveling through time.
Yep. So the body, energy, mind are patterns of awareness and energy, and they're moving through time, or they're creating a sense of time, of linear time. And they're repeating. You weren't a frog this morning, and now you're a person, and tonight you're going to be a tree. You're you're showing up as this pretty much all the time. The stories that are repeating in our minds or coming out of our mouths are often characterized by repetition, compulsion, emotions that repeat themselves. They're often very emotion laden. And they are far from the spontaneous stories being told with pure enjoyment by this reality, aka God, Lord Shiva, living awareness. So when this alive aware reality is being us telling our more limited compulsive stories, it's just taking its storytelling capacity, its power to tell stories, and experimenting with how many weird stories can I tell. Everything that's happening here is basically part of the self-expression of this reality of God, if you want to say that, which I don't mind saying that at all. But everything that's happening here is the art of, or the self-expression of God. And that means that having swatantra, unlimited freedom to create any old thing, any story, telling our limited repetitive stories and making us run around chasing our tails is just part of the drama. It's just part of the drama. So we aren't degraded in comparison to all of reality. We're an aspect of that Going back to the wave and the ocean metaphor, which is very common. We don't stand on the shore and like point at waves and make fun of them for being small and limited. We enjoy all their shapes and their differences, and we even like the teeny little waves as they creep up on the shore and turn the sand a different color. We enjoy all of it, every wave. I mean, have we ever seen a wave and we're like, oh God, I really don't like that one. That wave is such a turn off.
Surfers might do that.
Well, yes, they might say, I can't surf the wave, but that doesn't mean they don't still like it as a wave. Right? So that's God's relationship to us. Like we're all the little waves, and those waves just keep repeating, man. God is a wave junkie. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with the fact that our stories are limited and we suffer from them and they repeat because we don't understand what they really are. We aren't recognizing what they really are. So how do we get out of this? Well, the idea isn't to get rid of all stories. You know, in some traditions, largely in India, but also in other countries from that part of the world, there's this idea that the goal of spiritual practice is to not have thoughts. This is absolutely not taught in the direct realization traditions. The idea that we would run around practicing for our whole lives trying to get rid of thoughts is just ludicrous according to these traditions. This tradition says, because it's really so thoroughgoing, it's one of the things I really like about it, just so thoroughgoing. It says everything is that self-expressing itself, including your thoughts. We don't want to spend our lives pushing thoughts away or running after them. They just happen, thoughts. It's not a problem. Our thoughts do change when we're more realized. The quality of them changes. The quality of our dreams changes. The nature of our storytelling changes. But it all gets more enjoyable and we suffer less because we recognize more what the real nature of those things is. But we're not at war with anything. We're not at war with our emotions. We're not at war with our limitations. We're not at war with our karmas. We're not at war with our thoughts. We're not at war with our mistakes. We're just not at war with ourselves. In this tradition, it teaches us don't be at war with yourself because everything about you is God. At the same time, we are not thinking we must improve this. That's just another way of somehow feeling something's wrong with us. Nothing is wrong with anyone. And the desire, the urge to experience things differently, to be on the part of the story arc where our stories are more spontaneous and free and creative and freely expressive, to be telling stories like that instead of like, yeah, and then she said to me, I didn't like that. Yeah, and then she said to me, and I didn't like that. And then she said to me, and I didn't like that. No. I mean, we bore ourselves, right? It would be really nice if our stories weren't like that from our perspective of our own experience. So we have a built-in desire to be free of that. And we have a built-in desire to find ways to relieve ourselves of suffering. Different people have different ideas about that. At some stage of development, your idea of relieving yourself from suffering might be to get into a normative marriage, buy a house, have kids, save money for retirement, and die. That could be your idea of salvation. But anyway, there's more thoroughgoing ways to relieve ourselves of suffering. But there's nothing about that that is separating us from the nature of God or the nature of reality. All that is just natural and built in. The fact that we think there's a path, that we have teachers, that there's teachings, that we think we can feel better, that we want to feel better, that we feel devotion, that we get into all kinds of urgency about whatever we get into urgency about. All of this is also just an expression of this reality. There's nothing about that that proves that there's something wrong. It's all part of the same self. As practitioners, we can keep that idea, even if we haven't experienced living presence much. we can keep that idea in our back pocket that what we're doing is naturally built in. And when we're doing sadhana, and when we're being in a community or following a teacher or reading teachings or feeling a big, deep yearning to be freer, that we are just going along with what God does. There's nothing independent about it. There's nothing better about it. There's nothing better about it than what other people do in any absolute sense. I have a Pitta personality, and that means that I like adventures. I get bored easily. You know, you'll often hear me say, oh God, that's so boring. That's a very Pitta statement. Like, there's not enough variety here. There's not enough adventure. Let's strike out in a different direction. That's, all that is constitutional. From my perspective, doing this kind of path is just fun. It's adventurous. I like it. I like not knowing what's going to happen next. And I like being used in a bigger way. We can have these kind of feelings. We can have any feeling we want. We can even think, oh, you're being saved. If you feel like you're being saved, go right ahead. You know, it's not what this tradition is about, but if you want to drag that in from the Abrahamic Coalition, go ahead. It's fine. Just to understand that this is the big arc story. I really, really love this TV show called Fringe. It has 5 seasons? Yeah. 5 seasons, 20 some episodes each season. And so some episodes have like just a little self-contained story. And then there's this big complex arc story that goes through all 5 seasons.
I have a question about stories. Does God tell all of the possible stories?
No, because there isn't a set. There isn't a set of all possible stories.
It would be infinite.
Yeah, it's infinite, right? So there's no way that you could tell them all because they're spontaneous and there's infinite permutations. Think about something that you tell a story about to different people and how you change little things about it each time, or your intonation slightly changes. Those are all different stories about the same thing. The famous thing that Abhinavagupta said and that Ma said too was God makes the impossible possible and the possible impossible. In other words, has total freedom to create any story about anything. And there's no limits on that whatsoever. There's no end to it. There's no like, oh yeah, okay, I've done it now. I've done all the stories.
I have a question about me personally. I guess I'm asking for some tips and tricks here. I've come to the conclusion that my health might not actually be much better than this for the rest of my life. How do I go about living a fulfilling life? Because I feel like I really struggle with that. And how to live a happy, fulfilling life, knowing that this is just how it is.
You know, I've had illness a lot in my life also, and recently spent some time being pretty debilitated. And I think one of the things is to really try to disabuse yourself of concepts you have about what a fulfilling life would look like. I think you have some strong concepts around that because there's fulfillment in so many little ways all around us, even if we're just sitting still in an apartment or a house. So there's the fulfillment of just talking about myself, and maybe that will help you, of like being in an environment that is beautiful, where I can enjoy textures and colors and enjoy the care that went into creating the environment that I'm in. An environment where I'm surrounded by reminders of Ma and my practice and the real purpose of my life. And then the contentment of being able to give to others. Like, there's nothing that can stop you from doing that, even if you're lying in your bed, only able to move your eyes. You know, you could still be giving to others. And to me, that's just hugely fulfilling. To be able to give whatever it is I have to offer is really hugely fulfilling. The other day, I was preparing a astrology reading for somebody, and I was thinking to myself, oh God, this is on some level, this is just a slog preparing these things. Maybe I'll just stop doing them and only focus on divination, which is a lot dearer to my heart. And then I was doing the reading with this person, and you could just see all of the tension of their life just falling. The reading was just reminding them of who they really are and what they really want. And they were crying, and it was just like the slog was worth it. You know, it was like to be able to use this skill that I don't even like using that much, but it is a skill that I've worked on for a lot of years and had a lot of teachings about, but kind of reminded me of what's actually fulfilling, to be able to touch somebody and have somebody be reminded of what their life actually is. And, you know, you're a doctor, so you get opportunities to be in those moments with people, but it's not just that. It's like these days in particular, when things in the world are so horrible, just being able to have a conversation with somebody in a store or on the street, or being able to look into someone's eyes and have a real conversation and ask them real questions about themselves and engage people and just let out the kindness and just let it out like at every possible opportunity. That to me is just hugely fulfilling. And when I'm feeling down or frustrated because of my health, I just think of Mon. I just know that wherever she's taking me, that's where I need to be. That's what I'm supposed to be doing, including the illness. So I don't know what it's all for. I don't have any grand theory about it, but I feel, especially lately, just a deeper sense of surrender and just like being here in a simple way. I just feel there's just a real simplicity of just being here and giving, and that's it. And trying to stay in touch with what I feel devoted to at the center of my life. And that's a life. That's a beautiful life. The fewer things you must have in order to feel happy, the fewer things you're telling yourself, if I don't have this, I'm not going to be filled. I won't have lived well. If I don't have that. Those things are sources of abject suffering, really. Because you have so many opportunities to give the wealth that you brought here.
The traditions you teach from, is there the concept of Dharma?
It's not prominent in the sense of a finger wagging, you must be dharmic or live in a dharmic way or do your duty. It's not a sense of the law being laid down and some sort of narrow path that you have to follow, like it is in some other traditions. Something that Ananda Maya expressed very well, that Dharma is whatever is helping you to wake up, whatever is leading you to wake up more. That's what Dharma is, because she said human beings only have one ultimate duty, and that is to wake up, to realize the nature of the self. She said that is our sole duty. And so for her, that's what Dharma was. And I think that pretty much covers anything that we would be doing to help ourselves to realize what's actually going on here. Dharma can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, including just ordinary duties like your job and stuff like that. But it can also be interpreted by spiritual traditions as somehow following some kind of law laid down by Shastra or something like that. But Ma had a bigger idea of it.
What is Shastra?
Scripture. Following scriptural rules of some sort could be considered dharmic living, or following eating rules of Ayurveda could be considered dharmic eating. People often ask Ma, is everything in the Shastras? And she would say, no, it's a map. You don't see every leaf and every tree and every blade of grass on a map. But then she would pause and say, well, yes, but on the other hand, everything is in Shastra. But I think she meant everything is in everything. In any case, I think her definition is the ultimate definition of Dharma, which is whatever is helping you to realize the nature of reality of the self. If we can recognize that that is our sole purpose, or our only actually important purpose, it's not the only thing we do, but I'm saying it is the core purpose of our lives. It's built into us. If we can recognize that, then we suffer a lot less from all the rest of life. I could be doing things that I think of as lazy or something like that, but as long as I'm feeling that sense of devotion to my teacher and keeping aware of presence, it doesn't really matter because I know that I'm keeping to the core purpose of my life and everyone's life. Satsang with Shambhavi is produced by Jaya Kula, a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. If you enjoyed listening, please help us keep this podcast and many other teachings open to all by making a monthly or one-time donation. Visit jayakula.org to make a donation and explore more of our offerings.